Have you heard about the Online Harms Bill C-63? As the name implies, the bill seeks to address certain harms that people see online through various public platforms. We all know that hate speech in Canada is already punishable under the Criminal Code, and, in the past, it could be met with a penalty under Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act. In 2014, that penalty was deleted by the Harper government after it was repeatedly abused by false actors. In 2021, the Trudeau Liberal government attempted to resuscitate Section 13 in Bill C-36, but that bill died on the table when Trudeau called an election. Now, it's returned in the form of Bill C-63. While the proposed legislation contains necessary criminal bans on intimate content communicated without consent, including deepfakes created with artificial intelligence that we agree must be enforced and expanded, we do not agree that these laws should be left to the partisan jurisdiction of a Trudeau-appointed bureaucracy who will never prevent these crimes or find justice for the victims. The overreaching prohibitions on speech in Bill C-63 will silence public discourse and criminalize political opinion and activism. We've seen it before with Section 13 and the abuse of hate speech complaints. Once upon a time, Canada's legislation only affected dangerous people and ideas such as neo-Nazis, but nowadays, some woke activists want to censor even mainstream opinions, and even news outlets like the Western Standard, Maclean's, the National Post are no longer safe. The social consequences of Bill C-63 will be self-censorship, reduced political advocacy, the silencing of the majority, freedom of the press, and the result will be catastrophic for our justice system. Frivolous complaints and bad faith actors will logjam the already overburdened Canadian Human Rights Commission. Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, is a chilling realization of a fictional dystopian novel. It proposes a new Canada where truth is subjective and your individual rights and freedoms are under government scrutiny, and your thoughts could be presumptively prosecuted based upon their assumption of you. Bill C-63 will give overreaching powers to the government. Like Orwell's book 1984, this legislation is a warning about the dangers of the erosion of personal liberty and individual rights. Bill C-63 has been introduced under the false pretense of protecting children online, but this legislation goes much further and is a serious threat to freedom of expression and individual rights and freedoms. Let's look back to when Justin Trudeau and his Liberals deployed a ferocious diatribe against an entire group of Canadians during the pandemic. Trudeau pursued a campaign against any Canadian who publicly aired their concerns about the safety of the new vaccines by forcefully singling them out as racists, women haters, and science deniers. His contempt was seething, and worked to divide the country in a time when Canadians were fearful and needed leadership. Trudeau then once again scaled up his partisan attacks, calling the Freedom Convoy in 2022 hateful, when no actual hate speech was proven. Canadians need to understand that Bill C-63 will hand over to Trudeau and his Liberals a razor-sharp legal tool to punish opposing ideas, opinions, and those who choose to exercise their constitutional right to publicly express themselves in protest, or on social media. If passed, the Online Harms Act will establish a Digital Security Commission, which will be responsible for enforcing regulations adopted by the federal cabinet without parliamentary intervention. This means Trudeau and his Liberal government will be able to control and censor all social media in Canada, defining what they believe should not be said. If passed, Bill C-63 will add Section 810.012 to the Criminal Code, which states that anyone who has reasonable grounds to fear that a person will commit hate propaganda or a hate crime may lay in information before a judge. You could be held under house arrest or prosecuted because Trudeau and his Liberal government fear what you may be thinking or say based upon their presumption of who they think you are. A judge could require you to undertake to keep the peace and order you to wear a surveillance device and place you under house arrest, restrict you from consuming alcohol or marijuana, and compel you to provide bodily substances, prevent you from communicating publicly or only to a restricted list of approved people. Under this legislation, this could happen before you have said one word. and the penalties are severe. Your refusal to accept these restrictions could result in a prison sentence of up to 2 years. If someone is offended by what you say, they can file a complaint against you, even anonymously, and bureaucrats will subjectively determine whether you qualify as a hateful person. The Online Harms Act will also give the Canadian Human Rights Commission a new power to prosecute and punish offensive speech. If the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal were to find a hate speech violation under the proposed C-63, defendants could face fines of up to $50,000 and could be made to pay up to $20,000 to complainants. The process financially incentivizes complaints at essentially zero cost. This is made much worse by the fact that the complainant does not need to meet the legal standards of demonstrating burden of proof, such as whether they have suffered damage other than being offended. Despite its dystopian-like overreach and its fatal flaws, Bill C-63 is now moving forward after its second reading in the House of Commons. Now is the time to act. Canadians need to write their members of parliament and tell them to kill Bill C-63.